Fear is the gatekeeper to poverty, and courage is the master key to wealth. The rich understand that to build something great, you must be willing to step into the unknown, to risk the comfortable for the possible. It's not about reckless leaps. It's about deliberate moves fueled by preparation and belief. So ask yourself, are you living as a prisoner of your fears or as a pioneer of your future? Because your answer will decide the life you lead. Fear is the silent thief that steals your future. It's a quiet presence, often hiding behind thoughts and excuses, yet its power is immense. It paralyzes your ability to take action and traps you in a comfort zone that feels safe but is in reality a prison. You see, the comfort zone is not a place where wealth grows. It's a place where dreams wither and potential goes unused. I remember early in my life when fear of failure kept me from taking that first important step into business. I was comfortable enough in my job, but comfortable never built wealth. Courage, on the other hand, demands movement that may feel uncomfortable but is necessary for growth. Wealth doesn't come to those who wait for fear to pass. It comes to those who act in spite of it. I've often said, don't wish it were easier, wish you were better. Facing fear is part of becoming better. The wealthy understand this well. They see fear as a signal, not a stop sign. When you learn to recognize fear and move forward anyway, you begin to build momentum that fear cannot stop. Taking risks, stepping outside your comfort zone, these are not reckless actions, but deliberate moves towards your future. It's important to understand that fear is natural. It's an emotion designed to protect you from danger. But in today's world, most fear is not about physical harm. It's about loss of comfort, loss of security, or loss of approval. And while those losses may feel real, the greater loss is the opportunity cost of staying stuck. I've seen people afraid to invest in their education, afraid to start a new business, afraid to speak up for themselves, all because of fear. Meanwhile, those who acted courageously even when scared built fortunes and legacies. One practical way to overcome fear is to take small steps consistently. The first step doesn't have to be giant, it just has to be forward. As you take action, your confidence grows and fear loses its grip. Remember, fear is often about the unknown. The more you learn and prepare, the less unknown there is and the less fear controls you. You cannot allow fear to be your master. It is a tool to be acknowledged and managed, not an obstacle to be avoided forever. If you want to build wealth, you must decide today that fear will not dictate your life or your future. Courage is the currency of progress, and every time you spend it, you grow richer in ways no bank account can measure. Let fear remind you of what's at stake, but never let it stop you from moving forward. The rich don't avoid risk. They calculate and manage it. There's a common misconception that wealthy people simply take reckless chances, gambling their future on hope alone. But that's far from the truth. The millionaire mindset is not about blind leaps, but about thoughtful steps. Risk is a part of every meaningful opportunity, but it's never approached with ignorance or fear. Instead, it's studied, understood, and managed. When I started my journey, I quickly learned that avoiding risk altogether meant avoiding progress. The safe path often leads to mediocrity, but stepping into risk without a plan leads to failure. The difference lies in how you approach risk. The rich don't jump into the unknown. They gather information, weigh possibilities, and prepare contingencies. They see risk as a puzzle to solve, not a trap to fear. Take, for example, investing. A wealthy person doesn't throw money into the market without research. They learn about the investment, understand the potential ups and downs, and diversify to protect themselves. This is risk management, not risk avoidance. Even in business, successful entrepreneurs plan for setbacks. They set aside resources, develop fallback strategies, and adapt quickly when challenges arise. This calculated risk-taking allows them to seize opportunities others miss. I remember early on when I faced a business decision that felt risky. I could play it safe, or I could invest in a new product line that might not succeed. Rather than letting fear dictate my choice, I studied the market, talked to experts, and ran small tests. I never bet the farm, but I committed enough to learn and grow. That decision to manage risk instead of avoiding it open doors to greater profits and experience. Another key to managing risk is understanding your own limits and capacity. The wealthy know how much risk they can afford to take without jeopardizing their foundation. This is not about having a safety net for the faint-hearted. It's about knowing your numbers, your business, and your tolerance. Risk is a tool, but only if wielded wisely. Ultimately, the rich understand that every great reward requires some uncertainty. If you want to build wealth, you must get comfortable with uncertainty and develop the skill to manage it. Risk is not the enemy. It's a necessary partner on the path to success. When you calculate and manage your risks, you don't just survive uncertainty, you thrive in it. Step forward with wisdom, not fear. Plan your risks carefully, but never let the fear of the unknown stop you from pursuing the rewards you deserve. Fear thrives on uncertainty, and that's why it has such a strong grip on so many people. When you don't know what's coming, your mind fills the gaps with worst-case scenarios. You imagine all the ways things could go wrong, and that fear freezes you in place. It keeps you stuck, watching others move ahead while you remain on the sidelines. But the secret to breaking free from that trap is education and preparation. When you learn, you take the unknown and make it known. You turn uncertainty into opportunity. Wealthy people understand this deeply. They invest in knowledge as a way to shrink fear's power. Instead of hoping for luck, they prepare for what's ahead. When you educate yourself about a new business, investment, or skill, you remove the guesswork. The what-ifs become what's next. Preparation arms you with confidence, and confidence is the antidote to fear. I've seen this firsthand in my own life. Early on, I was terrified to step into public speaking. The fear of judgment, failure, and embarrassment nearly kept me silent. But I decided to study, practice, and prepare relentlessly. Each book I read, every speech I delivered, chipped away at that fear. What was once a paralyzing unknown became a mastered skill and a door to new opportunities. Education transformed my fear into power. This principle applies to wealth building too. People who want to grow their money but are afraid of investing often suffer from a lack of knowledge. The stock market, real estate, or starting a business can seem like mysterious, risky worlds. But those who take the time to learn through books, mentors, seminars, or courses reduce that fear dramatically. They begin to see patterns, understand risks, and spot chances that others miss. Preparation also means planning for setbacks. The rich don't pretend that everything will go smoothly. They anticipate challenges and build safety nets. They have emergency funds, diversified investments, and contingency plans. This preparation further reduces fear, allowing them to take calculated risks with peace of mind. Remember, fear is often just a signal pointing to where you need to grow. When you meet it with education and preparation, it loses its ability to hold you back. You replace hesitation with action and doubt with determination. This mindset shift is what separates those who remain poor in spirit and finances from those who break free and create lasting wealth. Don't run from fear, study it. Learn everything you can about what scares you. Prepare yourself to face it head on. In doing so, you turn fear's greatest weapon, uncertainty, into your greatest advantage. Taking small, consistent risks is like training your mind and spirit for the challenges that wealth demands. It's not about leaping blindly into danger, but about building the muscle of courage step by step. The rich understand this deeply. Risk is not a one-time event, but a habit, a daily practice that reshapes who you are and expands what you believe is possible. When you start with small risks, you're not just testing the waters. You're training yourself to move beyond fear little by little. It might be as simple as speaking up in a meeting, making a new connection, or investing a modest amount of money. Each small action, taken consistently, does more than just produce a result. It rewires your mindset. You begin to see that risk is not the enemy, but a necessary part of growth. Confidence doesn't come from luck or talent alone. It's earned through repeated experience. The wealthy know this, so they don't wait for perfect conditions or a big break. They take calculated risks regularly, learning from every success and failure. That steady pattern of action builds a foundation of trust in your self-trust that you can handle uncertainty and come out stronger. In my own journey, I started small. I wasn't born into wealth, nor did I have big resources to risk. But I learned early on that waiting for perfect timing was just an excuse to avoid discomfort. So I embraced small challenges, whether it was trying new ideas, meeting new people, or speaking publicly. Each risk, no matter how minor, added a brick to the foundation of my confidence. This habit of embracing risk also shifts your comfort zone. Comfort zones are like fences that keep you confined to what's safe and known. But each time you step outside, even in a small way, you push that fence a little further. Over time, your comfort zone expands and what once felt impossible or frightening becomes manageable. Wealth building requires this expanded comfort zone because money often flows to those willing to move where others won't. It flows to the people who can make decisions despite uncertainty and act when others hesitate. The rich don't get paralyzed by fear. They act consistently, even when the outcome isn't guaranteed. The key is not reckless gambling, but consistent, thoughtful action. Small, deliberate risks create momentum. That momentum builds confidence, which leads to bigger risks and bigger rewards. The habit of embracing risk becomes a powerful cycle. Each success feeds courage, and each failure teaches resilience. So don't wait for a giant leap. Start today with small risks that push your boundaries. Make a call you've been putting off. Invest in your education. Volunteer for a challenge. Over time, these small acts will transform you. Your mindset will shift from one of fear to one of possibility. Remember, it's the habit of taking risk that separates the wealthy from the rest. Develop that habit, and you will grow richer, not just in money, but in confidence, courage, and character. Risk without discipline is nothing more than gambling, and gambling is a game that most will lose over time. The difference between throwing your money away on a whim and making it work for you lies in careful planning and disciplined execution. Wealth is not built on luck or chance. It is built on calculated risks, on investment decisions backed by knowledge and a strategy to protect what you have. The rich understand that every risk carries a potential downside, and it's foolish to ignore that. But they don't let fear of loss stop them either. Instead, they approach risk like a business. They gather information, analyze the possibilities, and prepare for what could go wrong. This preparation isn't just about avoiding failure, it's about having a clear plan to minimize the impact of mistakes so that setbacks don't destroy their progress. When I first started in business, I learned the hard way about the dangers of reckless risk-taking. I once invested in an opportunity that promised big returns but lacked a solid plan for downside protection. The result was a painful loss. But from that experience, I learned the vital lesson that risk must be managed, not ignored. It was discipline and planning that transformed my approach going forward. True investment means knowing your limits. It means never putting all your eggs in one basket and having reserves to fall back on if the unexpected happens. The wealthy diversify their risks, spreading them across different ventures, assets, or strategies. This diversification is not about avoiding risk, it's about managing it wisely. They also use tools to protect themselves: contracts, insurance, partnerships, and exit strategies. When you have a plan that anticipates risks and charts a way to handle them, fear loses its grip. You can move forward with confidence because you're not blindly stepping into the unknown, you're stepping into a carefully prepared path. Discipline in risk also means controlling your emotions. It's easy to get swept up in excitement or fear, but the wealthy train themselves to make decisions based on facts and reason. They keep their emotions in check, which allows them to stay focused on long-term goals rather than short-term thrills or anxieties. This disciplined approach to risk is what separates the investor from the gambler. Investors understand that losses are part of the journey, but they never allow losses to be catastrophic. They see risk as a tool, not a trap. It's a tool that, when wielded with care, can build wealth steadily over time. So before you take your next risk, ask yourself, do I have a plan? Have I considered what could go wrong and how I will handle it? Have I prepared myself emotionally to stay steady no matter what happens? If the answer is yes, then you're not gambling, you're investing. Remember, the path to wealth isn't about avoiding risk, it's about managing risk with discipline. That discipline will protect you and empower you to take the steps that lead to lasting success. Fear has a way of wearing many masks, and one of the most convincing disguises it wears is that of practicality. When fear whispers, "You can't afford to take that chance," or "It's too risky," it often sounds like common sense. But true practicality is not the cautious voice that holds you back. It is the boldness that propels you forward despite uncertainty. It's the understanding that real progress requires movement, not hesitation. I remember early in my journey I was faced with a choice that seemed impractical to many, leaving a steady job to start a business with no guarantee of success. Many called it reckless, but deep down I knew that bold action was the only practical step if I wanted something different in my life. Boldness isn't about being reckless. It's about being decisive in the face of fear, knowing that standing still guarantees no growth. The wealthy understand this well. They don't wait for fear to vanish, because fear rarely disappears completely. Instead, they learn to act decisively, using fear as a signal to prepare better, but never as a reason to stop. The difference between staying poor and becoming rich often comes down to this. Those who prosper take action when others hesitate, when others say, "Wait until the coast is clear." The truth is, the coast never clears completely. Being practical means balancing risk with opportunity. It means making decisions grounded in reality, but fueled by a vision that demands courage. The rich know that practicality is not about avoiding risk, but about embracing the right risks at the right time. They move with intention, understanding that boldness is the engine that drives all achievement. Fear disguises itself as practicality because it wants you to settle for less. It wants you to accept the status quo and avoid the discomfort that comes with growth. But growth, by its very nature, requires discomfort. Wealth requires bold decisions, decisions that may feel risky but are calculated, informed, and purposeful. If you want to break free from fear's grip, start by recognizing when practicality is really fear in disguise. Ask yourself, am I holding back because I am truly weighing risks wisely, or am I avoiding action because I'm afraid? True practicality pushes you to prepare, to plan, but also to move. It refuses to let fear freeze you in place. Remember, wealth doesn't come to the cautious who wait for perfect conditions. It comes to those who step forward boldly, who make decisions despite fear, who understand that fear is not the enemy but a compass guiding them toward what matters most. Practicality and boldness are not opposites. They must work together if you want to build lasting success. Move decisively, even when fear tries to tell you otherwise. That is the mark of the millionaire mindset. Failure often gets painted as the villain in the story of success. But the truth is far different. Failure itself is not the enemy. It's the fear of failure that paralyzes us and keeps us stuck where we don't belong. Wealth and success demand a mindset that treats failure not as a catastrophe, but as feedback, a lesson that teaches you how to get better, stronger, and wiser. I've seen many people crippled by the mere thought of failing. They avoid opportunities, hold back their talents, and settle for less because they fear falling short. Yet the wealthy understand something very important. Failure is part of the journey, an inevitable stepping stone on the path to achievement. When I first started, I faced my share of failures. Deals fell through, plans didn't work out, and ideas that seemed promising didn't pan out. But I never saw those moments as reasons to quit. Instead, I learned from them, adjusted my approach, and kept moving forward. The difference between those who succeed and those who remain poor is not that the rich never fail, but that they never let failure define them. They refuse to be victims of fear. Instead, they use failure as a teacher, a guidepost, showing them what doesn't work so they can discover what does. Every setback holds a lesson. Every no brings you closer to the right yes. Fear of failure breeds hesitation, and hesitation steals opportunity. But when you shift your perspective, failure becomes a tool, a necessary one for growth and wealth building. The rich don't avoid failure. They embrace it with the understanding that each failure brings valuable information. It's a trial and error process that leads to mastery. This mindset of embracing failure also requires resilience. You must be willing to get up repeatedly, dust yourself off, and keep going. It's not the falling down that matters, it's the rising up that defines your future. The wealthy are persistent because they see failure not as defeat, but as part of the process. You don't have to wait until you feel fearless to take action. You only need to acknowledge that failure is not your enemy. Fear of failure is. When you realize that every failure is just feedback pushing you forward, you free yourself from the paralysis that fear creates. So, don't let fear of failure hold you back. View every stumble as a lesson, every mistake as a step closer to success. Keep learning, keep trying, and remember that wealth belongs to those who refuse to be stopped by fear. The path may be tough, but every failure along the way is proof that you're moving forward. Taking risks is not just a matter of jumping in blindly or following a gut feeling. It demands emotional control, a mastery over one's feelings that separates those who build lasting wealth from those who fall prey to impulse and regret. The rich understand that emotions can cloud judgment, turning promising opportunities into disastrous mistakes if allowed to run unchecked. In my own journey, I quickly learned that the difference between a good decision and a bad one often came down to how well I managed my emotions. When fear or excitement took the reins, my decisions were reactive, driven by momentary feelings rather than thoughtful analysis. But when I cultivated emotional discipline, I was able to step back, assess the situation with clarity, and make choices rooted in reason and long-term vision. Emotions, especially fear, tend to push us toward avoidance, while greed or excitement may push us to act recklessly. Neither extreme serves the goal of wealth building. The wealthy recognize that emotions will arise in every financial decision, but they refuse to be controlled by them. Instead, they train themselves to respond thoughtfully, balancing risk with reason. This mastery doesn't mean being emotionless. It means acknowledging feelings, but not letting them dictate your actions. When faced with a risk, the rich take a moment to breathe, reflect, and gather information before moving forward. This pause allows rational thinking to guide their steps rather than impulsive reactions. I recall times when an investment or business decision stirred excitement that nearly rushed me into action, but experience taught me to temper that excitement with due diligence and patience. Conversely, fear tried to paralyze me on several occasions, but I learned to observe that fear without yielding to it. It became a signal to prepare better, not to retreat. Emotional control is like a muscle that strengthens with use. The more you practice making decisions calmly, the better you become at separating your feelings from your facts. This skill is crucial because wealth is rarely built in moments of panic or frenzy. It's built in steady, rational progress. When you master your emotions, you're better equipped to navigate uncertainty and seize opportunities others miss. You transform risk from a source of anxiety into a calculated step forward. This balance between heart and mind is what empowers the rich to take risks wisely, avoiding the traps of rash decisions and missed chances. So remember, managing your feelings is not a sign of weakness, it's a mark of strength. To take the risks necessary for building wealth, you must learn to control your emotions, allowing logic and discipline to steer your journey toward success. Surrounding yourself with risk takers is one of the most powerful moves you can make if you want to change your financial destiny. Wealthy people don't just stumble into success alone. They intentionally surround themselves with others who embrace boldness and courage. This isn't about reckless behavior, but about adopting the mindset and habits of those who understand that risk, managed wisely, is the gateway to opportunity. In my experience, the company you keep shapes how you think, how you react, and what you believe is possible. When I was younger, I noticed that being around cautious, fearful people only reinforced my own fears. Their doubts became my doubts. But when I began spending time with entrepreneurs, investors, and others who faced risks head-on, I found my mindset shifting. Their stories, attitudes, and even their language rewired my way of thinking. It's like a contagious energy. When you hear people talk about calculated risks, learning from failures, and chasing opportunities despite uncertainty, it rewires your brain to see risk as a tool instead of a threat. You start to internalize the idea that growth happens on the other side of fear. Their habits become your habits, the habit of preparing, the habit of moving forward even when the outcome is unknown, the habit of seeing failure as feedback. I remember once sitting with a group of investors who openly discussed their recent ventures and the risks they had taken. Their confidence wasn't arrogance, but a quiet assurance built on experience and knowledge. Listening to them changed how I viewed my own opportunities. It pushed me to take steps I might otherwise have avoided. This principle goes beyond just learning new ideas. It changes your entire emotional relationship with risk. When you're around risk takers, fear loses its grip, replaced by a practical understanding that uncertainty is a natural part of any worthwhile journey. You start to see risk as a chance to stretch yourself rather than a reason to retreat. That's why the wealthy choose their circle carefully. They look for those who inspire courage, those who challenge their thinking, and those who hold them accountable. You become the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with, and if those people are bold risk takers, your mindset will inevitably shift. So, if you want to grow wealth, start by growing your circle. Seek out those who push boundaries, who think big, and who aren't afraid to fail forward. Let their energy rewire your mindset, and watch how it transforms your ability to take the risks necessary for success. Wealth has a curious way of rewarding those who act, despite fear, not those who wait for fear to vanish before taking a step forward. I have seen it time and again. The greatest fortunes, the most lasting successes, are not built by those who avoid risk altogether, but by those who learn to embrace it intelligently and persistently. Fear is a natural feeling. It signals caution, but it must never become a barrier to action.